As part of the channel, we've been keeping track of Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, because it looks like he's going to be somehow, in some way, related to the next iteration of Trumpism in the United States. And something interesting caught my eye the other day when I was watching him talk about one of the various scandals that the media has put him through in the past few weeks, since it's become general knowledge that DeSantis is going to make a move for the MAGA crowd. I can't remember which one it was, honestly. They've accused him of a bunch of things, and most of them have turned out not to be true. He's been answering the media by counterpunching, and that's a very MAGA type thing to do. Trump is a really hard counterpuncher, and I mean that's what put him in the positions that he got into in American politics. It's the part that he plays in the wrestling match. Now, DeSantis is coming in and gonna make a move for the MAGA crowd, but the thing that's a little bit crazy to me that I just realized is, this is gonna sound crazy, but it's his gesticulations. The reason why is because I see him almost directly mimicking Trump. And I can't help but to feel like if there was going to be a Trump-DeSantis ticket, or if DeSantis was going to be in some way actually involved in Trump in 2024, that he would not be directly copying Trump's hand movements the way that I just now noticed he is. Let me just show you a couple of seconds of Trump, doing Trump. And then I want you to see DeSantis talking in his most recent press conference, and you can see just exactly how obvious it is. So here's Trump being Trump. And these hand movements are part of the panache, the charisma, the style, and the way that he interacts with the crowd. And this is the same thing that you see with wrestlers. They have, a set of moves. These are Trump's moves when he's stumping, when he's interacting with the public. And you can see it's a very obvious style. Now let's look at Ron DeSantis in his latest address to the press. And you can already see how obvious it is. And I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying
they cut out everything that showed that their narrative was a piece of horse manure. And it shows you how dishonest. These are smear merchants. That's why nobody trusts corporate media. They are a disaster in what they're doing. They knew what they were doing was a lie. I knew what they were doing was a lie. Everybody here knows what they were doing is a lie. They know that we know they're lying, and yet they continue to lie. And they lied, and they lied, and they lied. We offered them the information, and they declined to interview the key people because they didn't want to let go of the narrative. Well, guess what? There's going to be consequences for that. I know corporate media thinks that they can just run over people. You ain't running over this governor. I'm punching back, and I'm going to continue to do it.
He's literally saying what I was kind of riffing about earlier in the episode. He is going to punch back. Why? Because he's seen Trump do it, and it works. It's funny because at one point Trump said that he wanted a new name for the fake news because he said fake news didn't quite encompass how dirty and how horrible the media was. And it seems like DeSantis, this next iteration of whatever Trumpism is in America, has come up with the better term for the media, and he just calls them smear merchants. And that's funny because that's a term that's been around for a while, however, not being used recently about the media, even though DeSantis is right. They are very much smear merchants. But I'm sure you guys saw how very Trumpian those hand movements are, and he's doing such a copy of how Trump moves. It's obvious DeSantis has been studying Trump's movements and his stumping style, how he interacts with crowds and how he interacts with the press, and it's obvious that he's going to be picking up the mantle in a lot of different ways, policy-wise too. I mean, he's making public declarations that they will have no vaccine passports in Florida, etc., etc. So the guy is doing all the things policy-wise that would put him in the position to take the MAGA crowd. But to see him copying Trump this much makes me feel like he's not planning on being on a ticket with Trump, because it would be strange to watch Trump interact like this with the crowd and then up comes his vice presidential pick or up comes his secretary of state or whatever and he speaks just like Trump does. Everything. It would be strange. The public relations firms that the DeSantis and Trump camps run would never allow it. They wouldn't promote it. And yet here's DeSantis's camp has him studying tapes on Trump and copying this guy's hand movements verbatim. Just wanted to point that out to you guys because it kind of alters my perception on DeSantis, because I was thinking Trump DeSantis 2024, but it doesn't look like DeSantis is the type to want to be vice president. And the way that he's mimicking Trump's gesticulations almost to the T, it makes me think he's not planning on being on stage with Trump for long. Of course, anybody who wants to try to make a move for the MAGA movement is going to have Trump on stage at some point during the rallies, right? At the beginning. But he's not planning on being Trump's vice president. I've now changed my mind on that. I don't think DeSantis wants to be anybody's vice president. And the more I see him defending Florida, I think that he may want to stay in Florida and be Florida's governor for a few years. But all of this is fluid and things change, so we'll keep an eye on it. It's very bizarre to see somebody study someone on TV and then come out and mimic them. The thing that makes it awkward for me, it's been like this all my life, is like if nobody says, hey, you're copying Trump, you look just like him. If nobody says that, then I feel awkward, because it's like everybody knows this guy is copying him, right? So are we going to acknowledge that? With Trump in Mar-a-Lago and DeSantis in Florida standing up for conservative values the way that he's doing, it's obvious that there's a new headquarters for conservative values in the United States, and it's where all the old folks are, down in Florida. No, I'm just joking, but seriously, no, I'm joking. Anyways, guys, like, share, subscribe to the channel. Check out all the stuff I've got in the pinned comment below. Working on 2 series of videos right now. One of them is on UFO disclosure. I think I mentioned it prior. And also, this is something that hasn't become real huge news yet, but I am making a series of stories about school board meetings at Litchfield School District in Arizona. They have gotten themselves in a bit of situation where they tried to enact an equity statement and bring in critical race theory unbeknownst to the public, and they had one smarmy school board member who joined in like midway through the process of them trying to enact this subversive policy, and he comes in midway through them pushing this thing and catches them and then outs them, and they are just fit to be tied. But now the parents have come and they've spoken their piece, and it's a very interesting story about, you know, just how critical race theory, these moves for diversity, how they're going to play out in the public school system, because we've talked about a couple of times that whenever parents start having their children come home and their children are legitimately talking about the stuff that it talks about in critical race theory, I have said for a while that that is going to be a watershed moment for the United States, because the parents are not going to like that, or they're going to love it depending on where you're at politically and ideologically. But I have a feeling the truth of the matter is a lot more parents are going to come home not liking it than liking it, and when you start messing with people's children, that is where you'll start to see some pushback. And I've always said I think it would not be strange to see the first beginnings of pushback against ideological subversion in our schools would start at the school board meetings. Well, boy, do I have some school board meetings for you, because when the parents showed up, they were pissed. And I'm going to play all of that for you. We're going to go through the whole story because it's a big, long story and it's got tons of background, and I'm excited to bring it to you guys because it's my type of thing, because I definitely want to fight critical race theory being put into our young children's schools along with any kind of other ideology. I don't want the Bible to be the only religious document pushed in public schools, because I don't want children to be indoctrinated in Christianity. I want them to have a choice. And if we took care of that back in the 60s or whatever, or the 80s, whenever we took the Bible out of school in that way, then we're not going to turn around and reintroduce this ideological nonsense and just a different thing to brainwash our kids with, right? We're not going to bring anything in that brainwashes our kids except good old-fashioned American nationalism, right, folks? So I'll be bringing that to you guys, and also the videos I talked to you about UFO disclosure. I have one video in each of those series completed, and I'll be releasing them over the coming days. In the meantime, I love you guys. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.